Welcome, ADs here. So this video is going to be a introduction to my my figure drawing course program. So before I jump into actually drawing figures, we want to establish the perspective needed to draw the figure, right? And to understand what you're looking at when you've got a reference or whatever, or you're trying to put your figures into an environment. So what I also will mention is that this will be the shorts version, right? So on Gumroad, by the time this video is up, this will be up on Gumroad, but it'll be more structured. I'll explain things more, give you exercises to do, show you examples, and all that stuff, right? Like an actual course. So if that's something you're interested in, have a look at the link in the description. All right, so this will be the first part in a long figure drawing series here on YouTube, and a more structured, extended, self-paced course over at Gumroad that I will be releasing in parts as time goes on. Alright, so we'll start with this stuff and then we'll look at how to apply it to the figure. Alright, so we'll be drawing boxy figures, and once we get comfortable with that, we'll start looking at how we can simplify all this perspective stuff and try and see some simpler shapes to draw the figure. And then once we've got some simple shapes down, we'll start looking at anatomy. So I'll go in detail into anatomy, and just keep in mind this is all, I'm sort of creating this thing based on all the knowledge that I've gained and things that I've personally found useful, right? Because people in the Discord have been asking questions, and in the comments as well, and I've taken that all into consideration, and I thought, I want to release something structured that if you wanted to follow, you could follow, or if you just want the basics of it, we've got that here on YouTube as well. So yeah, that's what the plan is. And the other thing is, once I've released a few I guess volumes of this series, I will be opening up mentorships for those of you who want my help personally as you're doing this program, or maybe with other stuff as well. That will be available soon as well. But first thing I want to do is just get this out, and then I'll slowly start making the other things available as well. Okay, so I don't want to make this video too long, so we're just going to go through this stuff that I'm going to say that you need to start drawing the figure with boxes. Okay, so I'm going to skip over the stuff that might be relevant to drawing buildings and props and stuff like that. I definitely encourage you to learn how to draw environments. This video is just for the sake of drawing figures. So yeah, again, if you want the extended version of this, head over to Gumroad. I go through exercises you can do, and it's you take out your own pace, and it's all there. And I also give you things that you can do to self-critique yourself. All right, so that's all over there. And then, well, depending on when you're watching this, mentorships will be available soon as well. Okay, so first thing you're going to want to be able to do is establish your 2-point perspective box. We need to understand that once you've set up this sort of grid, right, that you've probably seen in many places at this point, like you need to understand for this box here, these lines are heading to vanishing points number 1, right? We need to understand that. And then similarly, these are going to a vanishing point number 2. All right, we need to understand that. And the reason I'm not doing 3-point is just, in most cases, it's going to be 2-point. I mean, really, this is 3-point, but that third vanishing point is just really far away. It basically just turns into a 2-point perspective object. But if you want to do 3-point perspective, absolutely fine. So in this case, you just extend these lines going up to a vanishing point that way. But if you make it taper, like converge too much, it just feels a bit too dynamic. Like you might want to save that for like a certain type of composition. If you can do a 2-point box, very easy to do a 3-point box. So, but I'm going to focus on these. Okay, so you need to understand how this works, right? Once you understand how that works, right, because this you're drawing it with guidelines. So once you understand how that works, you need to move on to doing it without the guidelines. Okay, so freestanding, free floating box. Okay, and the trick to drawing believable boxes is, of course, we don't have, obviously when I'm drawing boxes like this, I can't see my vanishing points. So what do I do? Well, it's all about controlling your taper, right? So what does that mean? Like this line and this line. I just want to make it so that they're not converging too quickly. So too quickly would mean, so this would be slow converging. Right, like these two lines, maybe that's a bit fast. Oh, let's draw this. I'll draw a plane. Okay, so these lines aren't converging too fast, like these ones here. Right, they're gonna meet somewhere very far away. Right, because I mean, on a box, like these sides are parallel, but in perspective, they're going to a point, so we need those lines to converge, otherwise it'll just look weird. So this would be, you know, good tapering, because these lines are going to meet somewhere far down off the canvas, quite far away. But what if I was to, you know, do this? Or maybe this is tapering too fast. Like this and this, they're going to meet a lot sooner. Right, maybe somewhere here even. Or here, wherever they meet. It's just too soon. Alright, and that's making this plane look a bit wonky. Right, so if you don't want distortion, speaking of distortion, really what's happening is you have your two vanishing points, and then if you draw a circle, if you're drawing your box outside this circle, you're going to start to see distortion. Right, and that's what we're trying to avoid. So rather than, because we can't see our vanishing points, rather than trying to think of this every single time, I'm just saying, hey, if your box looks weird, maybe it's because you're tapering too fast or you're tapering in the other way. Right, so that would be like, if I exaggerate, right, like these are going in a different direction entirely. Again, I talk about this in the Gumroad video, but you just gotta make sure that you're tapering at a good pace, so that they meet very far away. That'll be good. Most of the time, if your box looks wrong, it's because I want to say most of the time it's because your tapering is, your lines are tapering too fast, or they're tapering in the other way. Most people's problem with boxes will result to that. Alright, so another thing to consider with that is, you know, this, well, let's say this is the closest line to us. This is further away. Alright, so this should be the longest, shouldn't it? So, if you're tapering in the wrong way, then that relationship will be broken. As in, this line here will be shorter than this one here, right, if you mess it up. Right, if I did that, you can see that, you know, this is going that way, that one's going that way. So the tapering, they're not going to meet those two lines. Alright, so that's not what we want. One thing you can do, if you're not noticing your tapering mistakes, is to flip your canvas, like I have here. Right, I have flip set to F. That will help you point out things because it just gives you a new look on your drawing. Right, because once you're drawing your box, or whatever it may be, you're looking at it for so long, you start to get used to it, and mistakes won't be as apparent. So that's what I like to do. The other option is just take a break and then come back with fresh eyes. Okay, those are two best tools you have for self-critique: flipping and taking a break. Okay, yeah, so to add to that, you have the tilted box. And my approach to the tilted box, I don't know if this is mentioned too much in other videos, but I just think of this whole thing, but I just rotate the horizon line, and I just do the same thing. Alright, so here's my horizon line, and I just, okay, it's like good, this is going there, that's going there, going there, going there, and then this is going there, that's going there. It's exactly the same thing. All I did was just tilt the horizon line. And then there's this note here that I made, right, about the vertical horizon line. What I'm talking about here is these. These are helpful because obviously you're not going to be drawing different horizon lines for your scene. Let's say this was your scene, and then you wanted to draw a tilted box. It could get a bit complicated. Right, I don't want to teach you stuff that you're probably not going to use, right? But maybe you can learn it. Yeah, if you're drawing environments, maybe you want to you want to do some extra stuff, I'm strictly thinking the figure. Alright, so we're drawing the figure, so we're just going to focus on the figure. But yeah, for tilted boxes, just do this thing, but just tilt your horizon line to vanishing point 1, vanishing point 2, and then this vertical horizon line thing is just referring to so like this, like all these lines are going to VP1, right? Now what if I was to rotate this as an axis going through? Right, let's imagine that it's just rotating about this axis, right? Oh, really, this should point. Alright, so imagine we're rotating along this axis. I hope that makes sense. So what would happen is this point will move, but it's not going to move left or right. Right, it's not going to do that. It's going to be here, but as I rotate it along this axis, it will just move up and down, right? So this vanishing point will just move somewhere along this vertical line. That's what I'm referring to here. Don't worry if that doesn't make sense, because it's not going to be too important, right? And that's why I opt for this, because it's just, well, it works. Yeah, it works. You learn how to do this, and then you do your freestanding boxes. That is what we want. We want to be able to just draw boxes, believable boxes in free space. That's what we want. That's what my goal is for you, for those who want to, you know, take the path I'm laying out for you. So once you can do that, now you need to get into slicing. So slicing is just going to help you modify shapes that you might want to use for your mannequin. So for instance, the you know, this kind of head, right? You know, that sort of head. Alright, I think the front is a bit too big, but this is the idea. Right, so you can take, right, this box, and then you can cut into it at these points. Right, you cut this out, and that's your modified box. You might also have the foot as well. I really don't like this shape, but you know, if you want to be able to do it, you've got to be able to slice into your boxes, because that's all there is. Okay, so it's a modified foot, or boxy foot. Could be maybe a bit too high. Let's take it there. Right, something like this. Right, that kind of shape. Or in fact, I think maybe like that. Well, you get the idea I'm going for here. That very boxy foot. Right, like that. Right, so the way I drew this box is slicing the outside box. Right, this in this color. I use this color to draw the box, and then I cut into it, and now I have my form for the foot. Okay, so if you want to be able to do that, you got to learn how to slice. And this kind of slicing is just drawing a box within a box, so it's not too difficult. So if you can draw a box, you probably can draw a box within a box. You'll just have to be aware of your tapering. The next thing, I only touched on a little bit in the video, bending and twisting. So this is me thinking ahead a bit. So for those of you who have a bit of knowledge of gesture, right, it's just going to add some extra appeal to your boxes early on in the figure drawing process that I'm laying out here. But this, I think you don't need to worry about. This, I would say, is good to work towards. Just some slight bending. So yeah, I only touch on this a little bit. I go in depth the most into the things that I consider to be the most important. Okay, this is just like extra. And also, I think it's easier to learn with the flour sack So that's why I'm not putting emphasis on the bendy boxes. Because with bendy boxes, you've got to keep track of like all these corners and these lines. It's not the best way to learn it, I feel. Once you learn the box and then you learn some some gesture, it should come easier. But if you're not sure about gesture, then it's just, yeah, it can be frustrating. The next thing is understanding eye level, right? Understanding when you're looking above at something, when you're when something's at your eye level, and then when something's below your eye level. For those of you, like when you look at a pose, you should be able to identify what parts of the body are above the horizon line, below the horizon line, at the horizon line. Okay, that's going to be very useful, because I plan to get into figure composition, like very basic stuff, just extending your knowledge. Because I mean, let's face it, in most cases, people are drawing figures in limbo, right? There's no reference to it in an environment, which is fair, right? Which we'll be doing. If you really want to understand the figure better, it's gonna be so useful to. Well, that's another thing as well. Most of us only know how to draw a figure at a certain distance, so I want to help push through that and start to learn how to draw figures at different scales, especially for those of you going into illustration, storyboarding, animation. Very important. Okay, so the more we understand about this perspective stuff, the better. And why not start early? Okay, so right, because I'm looking up at this box because I can see that underneath there's like these cues. I'm looking down at this box because I can see the top of it. This is an eye level box because the horizon line is going through it. That's my classification for this stuff. Worth learning, understanding how this works. And then lastly for our boxes is a optional exercise, but I think it's worthwhile. So this will be the box silhouettes. So the box silhouettes is just okay. So let's say you've drawn a bunch of boxes, and you understand how it works. You're drawing believable boxes, and it looks great. But now you want to try and speed up your box drawings. So how do you do that? I'm sure you could time yourself and whatnot. But what I'm gonna suggest is using box silhouettes. So that just means the outside shape. I'm just thinking you're just gonna see. Oh, it's gonna look terrible, but like you just want to see that. That's what you want to see that, and you want to be able to draw that nice and quickly. One option is to just, like I have here, go in with a Copic marker. Yeah, I have a 30% from Lane Brown's brush pack. So this is a Copic marker. And then you try and just paint the silhouette of a box. I go over on top of it and draw my box, and then just see how it looks. Alright, so if anything with this box, that's another thing as well. In the Gumroad videos, I leave my mistakes in and then I correct them, so you can see how I do that. And also, just to help you, because if you're making mistakes and you're trying to fix it for ages and ages, it's just not going to help as much versus making mistakes, recognizing that you made mistakes and just try and correct it on your next drawing. So I encourage that with this and for the rest of your drawing journey. So you have this, so that's one way to do it. So yeah, like this side, I think is tapering a bit. Like I think it's too parallel actually. Yeah. So when it's too parallel, it can actually feel like it's like these lines aren't going in the same direction. So I would just push it in a bit more if I was to adjust it. Alright, but I'm gonna leave that. But yeah, I make mistakes. You should too. So the other thing we have is just drawing the outside. So okay, so it's probably gonna have mistakes in it, but it's a very fast way of drawing your box. Right, that took me like, I don't know, like 5-6 seconds. Right, if you want to learn how to do that, you gotta practice this, and I explain how to do this in the video. I mean, it's not some secret, but you know, the way I think of it, the way I've internalized the box silhouette. Yeah, so that's it for boxes. So now let's take a look at what we need for our cylinders. Okay, So cylinders, the first step is ellipses. Okay, so this is going to double up as a nice line exercise and just getting your arm used to the motion of drawing arcs, and it's going to help you draw cylinders. So my approach, so one thing to know is, you know, for those of you who are mathematicians, like, well, a circle isn't an ellipse technically, but it's a special case of an ellipse, right? Because as you can see here, like this line and this line, they're not the same length. Same with this one, and for the rest of them. But if they are the same length, that's when we get a circle. If we ignore the circle for a second, this shorter side is called the minor axis, and the minor axis is going to the vanishing point. It will be this way actually. That's one thing you're gonna want to learn. And basically what we want is, if I just like draw this, your ellipse should be symmetrical on either side of the minor axis. Right, the minor axis is very helpful. It gives us the vanishing points, and it tells us where, and it, you know, it gives us information about how well we did with our ellipse. Okay, so make sure you learn how to draw those. My approach to this is you just kind of draw across. That's different lengths, and you know, this and this is the different lengths, right? So you could be that, whatever, and then you just kind of mark points, and then you try and get your ellipse to pass through all those points, right? That's what I talk about in the video on the Gumroad version. And also just drawing your minor axis first, and then trying to make your ellipse symmetrical about it. Okay, so minor axis, vanishing point, right? Lots of good information from that minor axis, because if I know where the minor axis is going, then my sides, the sides of the cylinder, need to be going in the same direction as the minor axis. Okay, so cylinders, ellipses. Once you can do an ellipse, like, okay, I draw my ellipse, and I know I've got my minor axis, so my minor axis is going to the vanishing point that's, you know, way down this way. So that means the sides of the cylinder needs to be going in that direction as well, and they're going to be tapering to the vanishing point, just like a box would. Okay, so I'm going to make sure we can draw nice ellipses. Keep in mind, I'm not going in depth with this stuff because I already know there's loads of videos out there, so this could just turn into another video about drawing boxes and cylinders, which I don't know if there's much interest in that. But for those of you who are, yeah, head to Gumroad and I've got you covered over there. Yeah, so once you understand how cylinders work, and you know that the minor axis separates our ellipse into two equal halves, and it goes to the vanishing point, right? It could be this way or that way, just depending on how you draw the cylinder afterwards. And once you understand that, you can draw nice, believable looking cylinders. You're good to go. You are good to go. So cylinders is not much work in terms of understanding how they work. The hard work is making them look good. Drawing an ellipse is quite hard. Right, if I'm not warmed up, my ellipses look terrible. Yeah, if you can do that, you're good. So the next thing I would want you to do is, again, understand eye level with when it relates to cylinders. It's the same idea. You just want to be able to identify when you're looking up above, or when it's at eye level, or when you're looking down at a cylinder. Okay, and it's the same thing. I can see the underside of this cylinder, so I'm looking up at it. I can see the top side of this cylinder, so I'm looking down at it. Right, and I haven't drawn an eye level cylinder, but if it was an eye level cylinder, the horizon line would be going through it. And an ellipse degree. So this is just going to help us understand how much this cylinder is turning away from us. So if you look at this series of rotations, which is an exercise that I get you to do in the Gumroad videos, for me it's important to understand this stuff. We start off with a circle. So if it's a circle, that means we're looking directly at the front of the cylinder. Right, so I can't see the side at all, is what I'm trying to say. But as it rotates, right, as it rotates, the degree of the ellipse, so as in, it's getting narrower, isn't it, as we go along? And this series is just telling me that this thing is turning away from me. Right, I'm showing that here. So as it rotates, the degree gets shallower, and I start to see more of the side, until eventually I go from a circle to just a rectangle. Right, because when I'm looking directly from the side, now it's just a rectangle. But when I'm looking directly at the front of it, it's a circle. In between, I see parts of both, but the circle, you know, turns into an ellipse, or, you know, whatever you want to call it. And that degree is getting shallower. Okay, so you want to be able to draw ellipses of varying degrees, you know, wide ones, narrow ones, okay? And then lastly, I just go over some line exercises just to help you draw long arcs and just get long motion from your lines. I was speaking of, I did Drawbox, and in Drawbox they recommend that you do it traditionally and you have to use a fine liner pen, or at least it's recommended. I'm not going to put those restrictions. In fact, I don't want you to use a fine liner, right? So the fine line, I think it's a fine liner, whereas like once you put your mark down, that's it. The mark's there, you can't really adjust it, it just sticks out. And what I'm going to encourage is actually what I learned from Will Weston when I was taking his class. You're just going to start with the light colour, and then once you've got your idea down and you feel good about it, you'll come over it. So I'll give you an example. So like when you're drawing boxes, for instance, like, okay, sketch my box, it's like, okay, vanishing point there, vanishing point there, vanishing point there. Like you're thinking about these things, right? And you're putting lines down. Okay. So here I go, my box. I'm looking at it, trying to see if I made any mistakes and whatnot. Right, so I can flip it. I can say, okay, this line isn't too good. I'm just messing up. Even though like my lines are messy, because the value is so close to the white of the page, it's not, you know, it doesn't look terrible. But once I feel good about this, now I can go over but with a darker color, right? Right, so I encourage sketching. Like I wouldn't want you to get into the habit of feeling like once your lines are down, that's it, end of the world. Can't go back. So yeah, that's why I like this. Start with a nice light grey, get your sketch in, do what you think is right. Once you feel good about it, just go over in a darker colour. Right, and the darker colour sticks out, as you can see, even though my lighter lines are messy. The darker colour is just going to stick out. That's just, you know, that's just the way value works. The contrast works. Okay, so in fact that's what I did with the boxes. I don't know if I did it with these, but yeah, there we go. Actually, I did it with these, didn't I? Yeah, you can see this grey here is lighter, and then afterwards I went over it with a darker. So I would want to see you do that, because I don't want you to worry about your lines too much. I just think it's better, you know, put your lines down and then see what you've got and then adjust, rather than having that thing in your head. I mean, you're trying to ghost it until it's perfect. Ghosting is good, by the way, but yeah, that's just my thinking. So I want to encourage you, like, to do this, like nice long lines, sketchy lines. I just think it's better. It's just gonna train your arm as you do this, because you know you're doing line exercises as a warm up. But even when you're drawing, you're training your line work as well. Because when you're drawing your lines, you're not being slow or you're not being hesitant. Like, you're drawing with the mindset that if I make a mistake, not the end of the world, right? I can always move on to the next one. Right, that's the mindset I'd want you to develop. Yeah, there we go. That's it. These are things that you'll need if you want to draw epoxy cylinder mannequins. Like I said, I'm not going through like how to do these, or just turn into a very, very, very long video. I mean, this is already long enough as it is. Yeah, if you want my guidance, head to Gumroad, and then soon I'll open up spaces for mentorships as well, for those of you who are interested in doing that. So I'll be working on the next stage for this as well. Alright, as always, I appreciate all your support. I'll see you in the next one.